Welcome back to Murdered While Melanated, the story of Maya Fuller, a 22-year-old that vanished after being invited to a party. Three suspects pled guilty, and this is the story. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hype the video for daily uploads. Murder While Melanated.
A major update in the murder case now of Maya Fuller. One of the three suspects has suddenly pleaded guilty. It happened just days before her trial was set to start in Wilson County.
On August 6th, 2022, a grim discovery was made out in a lonely, wooded part of Wilson County, Tennessee, on the remote road of Trammell Lane. For an entire week, a family had been living an absolute nightmare, frantically searching for their 22-year-old daughter, Maya Fuller, who had just vanished without a trace. They knew in their hearts that something was terribly wrong, and their worst fears were about to be confirmed. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation was called to process the scene, and their crime lab confirmed the devastating news. The remains belonged to Maya. She was a beloved honors graduate from the nearby city of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. This wasn't someone who lived a dangerous life. In fact, the local sheriff would later say she was a good girl from a loving family. And that just made the central question even more chilling. How did this promising young woman end up here, executed with 7 gunshots, and her body left behind in an abandoned lot? This is the story of how a seemingly trivial, everyday disagreement spiraled wildly out of control, becoming a calculated, cold-blooded, and unbelievably brutal murder. Join us in Chapter 12 of the Grim Chapters as we examine the tragic story of Maya Fuller. To really understand the shock and tragedy of this case, you first have to understand exactly who Maya Fuller was as a person. She was a 22-year-old woman from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and by every single account, she was a bright light in her community, someone who was clearly going places. Maya wasn't just an average student, she was truly an exceptional one, having graduated from Blackman High School in 2018. During her time there, she wasn't just an honors student on paper, she was also a dedicated member of the school's basketball team. Her academic success was serious and well-earned, as she graduated with the very high honor of magna cum laude. She was a responsible and driven young woman, and in that summer of 2022, she was working a job at Geodis Park, helping out during events for the Nashville Soccer Club. This positive image of Maya as a responsible, high-achieving person wasn't just a story her grieving family told. It was the official truth. This was later confirmed by Wilson County Sheriff Robert Bryan, who stated in a press conference that Maya was a good girl who came from a loving family. Her connection to her family was incredibly strong, and she was especially close with her mother, Tanya Fuller. Maya was in daily contact with her relatives, which is precisely why her sudden silence set off such loud and immediate alarm bells. When Maya first went missing, her family stressed to the police that this behavior was completely and totally uncharacteristic of her. They insisted that she never left home for extended periods of time without calling or answering messages or texts. And this one detail was critical for investigators, as it established right from the very beginning that she was not a willing participant in her own disappearance. In the sad days after her body was found, Maya's community came together to hold a vigil for her, releasing balloons in her memory. Her friends and family who gathered to mourn her all said the same things, describing her as having a great spirit, being always happy, and as someone who always wanted to give just 100% in everything that she did. The portrait that emerged was not just of a random victim, but of a beloved, sociable, and high-achieving young woman. And this is what makes the calculated, cold-blooded nature of her murder all the more tragic. That terrible fuse was lit on or around July 29, 2022. Just one day before the murder. It all started with what the court records call a simple disagreement, or an altercation between Maya Fuller and another young woman, 21-year-old Tiana Tipton. And this was one of the most frustrating and chilling parts of the whole story. We don't know what this disagreement was about. No police reports, no court records, nothing available to the public ever states what they were fighting about. It's this big informational void, a key mystery that just hangs over the entire case. This suggests that the motive wasn't some high-stakes dispute over money or something serious. It was most likely a personal slight, a petty argument, but it was an argument that Tiana Tipton, who was reportedly enraged by it, decided to escalate to a sociopathic and wildly disproportionate level. Tipton was so angry that she immediately started a conspiracy, and she didn't act alone. She went and enlisted her own 20-year-old brother, Tyshawn Bowles. She identified Maya to her brother, which basically means she marked Maya as a target, and she gave him a very specific job to do. His role was to be the lure he was tasked with finding Maya and bringing her to a location where Tiana could get her revenge. So, Tyshawn did exactly what his sister asked. This was a complete and total brother's betrayal. It was a cold, premeditated act. Tyshawn searched social media until he found Maya, and once he had her, he contacted her with a deceptive invitation. He invited Maya to come to a party that night, which he said was going to be held at the Island Vibes nightclub in Antioch. And we know for a fact this was premeditated. This wasn't some innocent mistake where things just got out of hand. Later on, Tyshawn's own plea agreement would confirm that he lured Maya to that nightclub, with the full and specific knowledge that his sister, Tiana Tipton, planned to assault Maya as soon as she arrived. He knew Maya was going to get hurt, and he led her there anyway. And so Maya, a trusting and sociable person, finished her work shift on Saturday, July 30th, 2022. She accepted the invitation from Tyshawn, got in her car, and started driving to the Island Vibes nightclub, completely unaware that she was driving all by herself straight into a trap. Maya arrives at the Island Vibes nightclub, pulling into the parking lot on that Saturday, July 30th, 2022, thinking she's just there to meet someone for a party. But the trap snaps shut almost the moment she's there. The planned assault that Tyshawn Bowles knew about was executed immediately, and this was not a fair fight by any stretch of the imagination. It was a brutal ambush. Tiana Tipton was there, and she wasn't alone. She had her 20-year-old associate, Lamira Pipkins, with her, and according to the investigation, both women started to physically assault Maya. And where was Tyshawn, the brother who set this all up, the one who lured Maya there with that fake party invitation? Well, he was present for the whole thing. He wasn't some innocent bystander who just got caught in the middle. His own plea agreement would later confirm that he just stood there and watched as his sister and her associate assault Maya. And it's right here, in this moment of violence, that the entire crime spirals from a horrible, planned assault into a capital crime of kidnapping and murder. Because Tyshawn told investigators that he heard his sister Tiana give a chilling, 4-word command that sealed Maya's fate. He heard her yell, "Pop the trunk." That simple command was the legal pivot point. This wasn't just an assault anymore. This was now, officially, an aggravated kidnapping. Following that command, Tiana and her associate, Lamira, then forced Maya into the trunk of Tiana's vehicle. They just left Maya's own car right there, abandoned in the nightclub parking lot, which would later become an early clue for investigators when her family reported her missing. But Tyshawn's involvement didn't even end there. He didn't call the police. He didn't try to stop his sister. Instead, he admitted that he got into his own car and drove behind his sister's car as the convoy left the nightclub. He was actively following the car that was carrying Maya, trapped in the trunk. He followed them for a while until, as he claimed, she drove too far ahead and he lost her in the dark. Now, Tiana was alone with her victim, driving from Antioch in Davidson County, across the county lines, and into the more rural, remote parts of Wilson County. She knew exactly where she was going. Her final destination was that desolate wooded area on Trammell Lane, a spot later described as an abandoned lot or a piece of property that was in the early stages of development. It was dark, it was remote, and it was the perfect place to commit a murder. In that lonely spot, Tayana removed Maya from the trunk of the car, and then, in an act of pure, cold-blooded execution, she shot Maya 7 times. She then fled the scene, abandoning Maya's body right where she fell. This final act of desecration was so callous that it led to an additional indictment for abuse of a corpse. And just like that, Maya was gone. For an entire week, she was simply listed as a missing person. Her family was frantic, calling her phone, sending texts that would never be answered, completely unaware of the horror that had already taken place. For that first week, Maya was simply missing. But that agonizing wait for her family came to a tragic end on August 6th, 2022. That's the day human remains were located in that same wooded area on Trammell Lane. And just days later, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab officially confirmed the remains belonged to Maya Fuller. Now, the case wasn't a missing person investigation anymore. It was a full-blown homicide. The medical examiner's autopsy report laid out the hard, cold facts of what had been done to her. The cause of death was definitive: gunshot wounds. When detectives from the Wilson County Sheriff's Office, led by Detectives Walker Woods and Travis Donnell, processed that remote crime scene, they found 7 shell casings on the ground which perfectly matched the 7 shots that had killed Maya. But the autopsy showed something else. It also noted injuries to Maya's ribs and a leg, which was the physical proof of the brutal beating she had endured back at the nightclub before she was ever put in the trunk. And one more crucial detail: the toxicology report came back completely clear. Maya had no drugs or alcohol in her system at all. She was completely clear-headed through this entire horrific ordeal. The detectives now knew what happened, but they still had to prove who did it. And this investigation was unbelievably complex. It wasn't just one crime in one place. It was a massive, multi-jurisdictional case that spanned 3 different counties: Rutherford County, where Maya lived; Davidson County, where she was abducted; and Wilson County, where she was murdered. This meant Detectives Woods and Donnell had to coordinate a massive effort between their own office, the Metro Davidson County Police, and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. For nearly a year, this case was painstakingly built, piece by piece. This was not a cold case, it was a methodical, modern investigation. The biggest problem was that they had no cooperative witnesses. So, with the trail of physical evidence growing cold, investigators turned to the one thing that never lies: digital forensics. The critical breakthrough in this case came from cell phone data. They followed the digital breadcrumbs left behind by the suspects' phones. They were able to digitally trace the movements of all the suspects, establishing a timeline that connected Tayana, Tyshawn, and Lamira to the Island Vibes nightclub at the exact time of the abduction. And most critically, that cell phone data traced Tayana Tipton's phone all the way to that remote, desolate murder scene in Wilson County. They had them. Armed with a year's worth of this digital evidence, the Wilson County Sheriff's Office presented its case to a Wilson County grand jury in July 2023, and they secured indictments for all 3 individuals: Tayana Tipton, Tyshawn Bowles, and Lamira Pipkins. They were all arrested in Nashville. Then, on July 20th, 2023, all 3 suspects appeared in court for the first time, and all 3 pleaded not guilty to all the charges. The suspects were caught, and the evidence seemed overwhelming. But getting justice for Maya's family would prove to be complicated, controversial, and for some, truly heartbreaking. So the suspects were caught and the case was built. But the wheels of justice can move incredibly slow. The first domino in this case didn't fall for almost 2 years. On May 9th, 2025, the ringleader herself, Tayana Tipton, who was now 23 years old, was in court for what everyone thought was just going to be a routine pretrial hearing. Her full jury trial was already scheduled to begin the very next week. But she gave everyone in that courtroom a huge shock. Her attorney stood up and informed the court that she wanted to change her plea. Now, why would she do this after claiming she was innocent for so long? Well, it turns out the prosecution had just played a winning card. Her own brother, Tyshawn Bowles, had finalized his own plea agreement just last week. And the biggest part of that deal was that he had agreed to testify against his sister. Tayana was trapped. Her case was completely indefensible, especially now that her own brother, her co-conspirator, was ready to get on the stand and point the finger right at her. So she did the only thing she really could. She offered what's called an open plea. This wasn't a deal the prosecutor offered her.
You see? You see? There's no honor amongst thieves and criminals, bro. I know because I've been there, running the streets, young. There's no honor amongst that. Once the DA get the case, everybody's going to play ball for themselves. Now, this case right here was insane. You really went and aggravated, kidnapped, across state lines, took this girl to the woods and hit her with 7 shots? Oh my goodness. This is insane, bro. You threw your whole life away for what? It had to have been over a boy or something like that, because what would make you go this wild? That shouldn't have made you, but I know y'all women don't know how to handle yourselves about or with men. So it had to be about that. Well, that's what the argument was over? We don't know, and we'll never know.
This was a complete and total surrender. She pleaded guilty to every single charge just as she was indicted, including first-degree murder. Judge Brody Kane accepted her plea right then and there and immediately sentenced her. Life in prison. Maya's family, who was present in the court, agreed to this sudden resolution. It was surely painful, but it meant they wouldn't have to sit through a long, agonizing trial and relive every horrible detail. And most importantly, by pleading guilty, Tayana waived all of her rights to an appeal. Her case was over. But then, 5 months later, on October 14, 2025, it was Tyshawn Bowles' turn to be sentenced. This, remember, was the man who lured Maya to her death. And this is the moment where the justice Maya's family received began to feel fractured and truly heartbreaking. Because of his deal to testify against his sister, his original first-degree murder charges were dropped. Instead, he was allowed to plead guilty to a much, much lesser charge: facilitation of aggravated kidnapping. His sentence for his role in Maya's murder was 12 years. The outrage from the family and the public was immediate, especially
15.
when they learned the details of that sentence. He would be eligible for release after serving just 30% of that time, which comes out to only about 3.5 years. The district attorney, Jason Lawson, had to publicly defend this controversial deal. He argued that the plea reflects Tyshawn's level of involvement. He explained that while the prosecution could prove Tyshawn knew an assault was planned, they just couldn't prove that he knew,
A murder.
beyond a reasonable doubt,
That was going to
that
happen.
his sister was going to kidnap or murder Maya. But that legal explanation meant nothing to Maya's grieving mother. Tanya Fuller stood up in court and gave a powerful, heartbreaking victim impact statement, completely rejecting those legal excuses. She looked at the court and said, quote, "My family do not agree with the plea and the deal that has been made today." She cut right through all the legal arguments and summarized the horror of what he helped do, saying, quote, "Maya was murdered, she was beaten, and was tossed just like trash. Tayana Tipton is serving a life sentence, and Tyshawn Bowles is serving his 12-year sentence. But what about the third suspect, Lamyra Pipkins, the associate who, according to the investigation, helped Tayana beat Maya at the nightclub? Well, as of late 2025, her case is still not fully closed. She is still facing her own charges of first-degree murder and kidnapping, and her trial is scheduled for the November 2025 court docket. Maya Fuller's murder was a catastrophic and senseless escalation from a simple petty dispute. The case was a triumph of modern digital forensics, but it was also a painful example of what they call a prosecutor's dilemma. For Maya's family, the result is a fractured justice. A life sentence for the killer, but a perceived betrayal in the 12-year effective sentence for the man who lured their daughter to her death. What are your thoughts about the tragic case of Maya Fuller? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you
So there you have it, man. Tragic, sad story. Maya Fuller lured to her death over a dispute, bro. Insane. Insane work. I don't even got nothing to really say, bro. Like how y'all just roof y'all own life like that over disagreements, no conflict resolution skills or nothing. Like that era of youngins are so weak, man, it don't make no sense. So pussy. Like they can't handle nothing. Unbelievable situation, man. Murdered While Melanated, the channel where we cover melanated people murdered by melanated people. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, and hype the video for daily uploads. See y'all on the next one.